The glass girdled the desert sky, cracked with fire as a strange object fell from the stars. Soldiers arrived within minutes, their boots sinking into hot sand as smoke filled the air. The capsule was half buried in the earth, glowing blue like ice. On fire, inside, through a clear dome, they saw Herc, lied like a child in glass. No one moved. She was too strange, too fragile, too beautiful to be real. The girl's skin shimmered like crystal, thin and glowing, veins of light running under the surface. She looked asleep, but her chest moved slowly, like she was breathing for the first time. "She break if we touch her," a medic whispered. "Command." Hesitated, scientists argued, and drones scanned her. But no one stepped forward, except him. Eli Morgan was a field engineer, not a soldier, not a leader. He didn't wait for orders. He climbed onto the capsule, pressed a hand to the glass, and whispered, "It's okay. You're safe." Her eyes opened. Not just opened, locked onto his. They glowed a deep ocean blue, full of fear, confusion, and something else, trust. The dome opened with a hiss, and heat burst out. Everyone stepped back, weapons raised, but Eli stayed. His hands still outstretched. The girl blinked once, then slowly reached for him. Her fingers hovered near his, shaking, unsure. Then contact, light rippled from her hand, and Eli gasped, not from pain, but from how soft she felt, like warm glass. Smooth and delicate, the others watched in silence as she climbed out of the pod. Barefoot and silent, her body shimmered under the sun, wearing only a layer of glowing threads like silk. She didn't speak, she didn't run, she only followed him back. At the base, no one knew what to do. Was she a weapon? A scout? Or victim? Eli didn't care. He gave her a blanket, a quiet corner, and food she wouldn't eat. She sat on the floor, staring at the lights, flinching at every loud sound. When medics tried to scan her, she froze. Trembling so badly, her arms cracked with tiny lines, her skin's too thin. One muttered, "Even sound hurts her." But she didn't cry, she didn't scream. She only looked at Eli, waiting, hoping. That night, she drew on the wall with her finger, leaving glowing trails like paint. The images were clear. A cage, a broken chain, fire in the sky, and a dark shadow chasing her. She had escaped something. She had nowhere to go. In the morning, Eli found her sitting by the window, watching the sunrise. He sat beside her, careful not to get too close. "Can you understand me?" he asked softly. She nodded once, then pointed at him. "You are safe," she said, voice barely a whisper, her first words that same day. Scientists came from orbit, eager to study her. They called her Christery, a race from a system thought. Extinct, built, not born, they said. Designed to obey, serve, never feel, but she did feel. When a technician dropped a cup, she flinched and covered her ears. When Eli smiled, she smiled back. When thunder rolled across the sky that evening, she hid behind him, shaking like leaves in the wind. She wasn't a machine. She wasn't just alien. She was something in between. Eli named her Elyra. After the constellation where her kind was first seen, she tilted her head when he told her. Confused but pleased, "Elyra," she repeated, touching her chest gently. From that day, she began to change. She copied how he sat, how he breathed, how he smiled. She watched him fix machines and tried to mimic him, failing adorably. One night, she reached for a flower growing outside the base. A thorn pricked her finger, and her skin cracked open, glowing with white light. She didn't cry, she simply walked to Eli. Holding her hand out like a child showing a broken toy, he panicked, called medics, but she stopped him. "Only you," she whispered. Eli used a special nanogel to seal the wound, gently pressing it over her fragile skin. Her eyes widened, lips trembling. "Why?" she asked. "Because you're not alone anymore," he replied. She stared at him for a long time. then placed her head softly against his arm, careful not to lean too hard. That was the moment Eli knew she wasn't just alien. She was broken, gentle, and searching for something. Something only a human heart could offer. And somehow, despite the risk, she chose him. The girl who couldn't be held Elyra watched the world like it was made of fire and glass. Everything around her seemed too loud, too fast, too painful. She walked slowly through the human base, her bare feet never making a sound every time someone raised their voice. She shrank every time a door slammed, her body flinched as if struck. Her skin glowed faintly in the dark, fragile and see-through, veins pulsing with soft blue light. Eli noticed how carefully she moved, how she always stayed near walls, far from people. He built her a private space beside his workshop, lined with cushions, quiet lights, and soft sounds. She sat there, curled up, watching him work with machines, copying his movements with her fingers in the air. One day she reached out to touch a small robotic arm, but the metal left a scratch on her skin. It didn't bleed, but her glow dimmed. "Elyra, you're hurt," Eli said gently, rushing to her side. She looked down at her arm, eyes wide. "I didn't break it," she whispered, more worried about the tool than herself. Eli shook his head. "I'm worried about you that night." She tried to speak more, words slow and broken. "I was made to be silent," she said, voice shaking. "I spoke. They hurt me." Eli clenched his fists but stayed calm. "No one will hurt you here," she nodded. But doubt still clouded her eyes the next day. She drew again, this time on paper Eli gave her. She drew a planet of glass towers and shadowed figures, a chamber with lights that burned her, and long wires tied to her back. At the center of every image stood a single figure, smaller than everyone else. Her drawings told the story better than words. She hadn't escaped a home. She had escaped a cage. Elyra didn't eat much, only drinking water and small bits of soft fruit. Her body couldn't process human food easily, and every bite seemed to exhaust her. But she watched Eli eat with quiet interest, mimicking how he held spoons and cups. One morning, Eli brought her a small kitten from the nearby outpost. He thought it might comfort her, show her something gentle. The kitten meowed once and rubbed against her leg. Elyra froze, then slowly picked it up with both hands, holding it like it was a newborn star. Her entire face changed, lips parting in awe. It likes me," she whispered. But the moment the kitten hissed, startled by a loud bang, Elyra dropped it in panic. She backed into a corner, shivering. "I broke it," she cried, her glow flickering. "I break everything." Eli knelt beside her, placing the kitten on her lap. "It's okay, Elyra. The kitten is fine." Her eyes welled with light, like tears. "Why does it still want me?" "Because you're not a monster," Eli said. "You're just someone who's never been shown love." She didn't speak again for hours, only held the kitten close, as if afraid it would vanish. That evening, she stood near Eli while he repaired an old drone. Suddenly, she touched his hand, not by accident, but on purpose. He froze, afraid to move. Her fingers were ice cold, but pulsing with warmth from within. "You never break me," she said softly, "even when I fall." Eli looked into her glowing blue eyes, filled with something no machine should have. Emotion. Her voice trembled. "Everything I touch either leaves or dies." He held her hand gently. "Not this time." Lyra's light grew brighter in that moment. Not because of fear, but because of hope. The base doctors grew curious, running quiet tests from a distance. One called Eli aside, concern in his voice. "She's changing," he said. "Your presence affects her brain, her body. She was engineered to serve, not to feel. But now she's forming attachment." Eli nodded. "Good, then let her feel." But the doctor warned. That heart of hers, not just metaphorical, They showed him the scan, inside. Lyra's chest pulsed a core not found in any known crystalry. It looked organic, wrapped in glass, and surrounded by glowing nerves. "She's been modified," the doctor whispered. "She wasn't born this way. She chose this heart." Eli returned to her that night. Quiet, thoughtful. Lyra sat near the window again, humming a strange alien tune. When he sat beside her, she asked, "If I break, will you leave?" "Never," he said. She smiled a small, shy curve of lips and leaned her head lightly against his shoulder. "I'm still learning what safe means," she said, voice full of stars. Eli looked out at the moon above, knowing deep inside, she wasn't just learning, she was healing. And he was the first soul in her fragile world to ever teach her what it meant to be loved. Alien science, human kindness. Lyra sat in the sunlight, watching her fingers glow through her thin, glassy skin. She looked like a statue made of crystal and moonlight. But inside her chest was something new, something that shouldn't exist. A heart, not a machine, not a power core, but a pulsing, living heart that made her feel pain, joy, fear, and hope. Eli sat beside her. Watching her sketch pictures on paper with gentle strokes, she drew herself again. But this time she stood beside someone, a tall, human man with soft eyes and kind hands. She handed him the drawing without a word, her lips trembling as if waiting for rejection. Eli smiled. "That's me," he said. "And that's you." She nodded slowly. "Is it wrong to want to stay near you?" "Never," he said, and her glow brightened with joy. The base commander called Eli into a meeting that afternoon, his face hard, his voice cold. "The girl is becoming dangerous," he said. "She's showing rapid emotional growth, and we don't know what her limits are. She's a threat," another officer added. "We should place her in a containment chamber before it's too late." Eli slammed his hand on the table. "She's not a weapon. She's a person." They didn't listen, so he made a decision. He contacted Dr. Lin, a specialist in alien physiology at the Terran Institute. Lin arrived 2 days later, bringing scanners, medical bots, and curiosity. Lyra didn't trust her at first, backing into corners whenever she entered the room. But Lin was patient, speaking in soft tones and showing her every tool before touching it. Lyra slowly opened up, letting her scan the glowing patterns inside her chest. The results were shocking. "She has emotion centers humans would recognize," Lin said. "And the core in her chest is no standard crystalry tech. It's something else entirely." Lin explained that Lyra's heart was artificial but alive. Grown in a lab, maybe stolen, maybe illegal. It gives her emotion. Lin whispered, "That's why she can feel." Lyra sat quietly, listening, her hands folded in her lap. When Lin asked her why she had it, Lyra looked at Eli and said, "I didn't want to be empty anymore." Later that night, Eli found her sitting near the garden, staring up at the stars. "I was born to obey," she said. "But I always felt wrong, like I was more. I escaped when I heard the word freedom," she continued. "A worker whispered it in the lab, and I broke the wall that night." She looked down at her glowing fingers. "Then I found you," Eli touched her hand gently, her skin warm like soft glass under sunlight. "I think you were always more," he said. "You just needed someone to believe it." Lyra leaned against him, not afraid, not shaking, only still and safe. But peace didn't last. Warning siren pierced the calm, red lights flashing across the base walls. An enemy signal had entered the system. Lyra stood up, her body trembling not from fear, but from recognition. "It's them," she whispered. "They found me." The sky above cracked open as alien ships descended, sleek and dark, shaped like claws and knives. The Zarth Dominion, a ruthless species known for mind control, bioweapons, and slavery. Lyra backed away from the window, her glow dimming. They want the heart. She said, they made it for control, but I made it for love. Eli grabbed his gear and stood in front of her. I'm not letting them take you. She shook her head. If they capture me, they'll destroy everything. Eli turned to Lynn. Can we move her? She's too fragile, Lynn said, but we can hide her for now. They moved her into the lower hangar, built beneath layers of earth and steel. Lyra sat in the center, hugging her knees. The kitten curled beside her. Her eyes were dim. Her breathing slow. I'm tired, she said. I thought if I came here, I could be someone new. Eli knelt beside her. You are someone new. She touched her chest. Then why does it hurt here? Because you care now, he said, and that makes you strong. Outside, the sky roared. Enemy ships circling like vultures over wounded ground, but deep in the bunker. A fragile girl held a heart not meant to exist, and a human sat beside her, willing to fight the galaxy to protect what she had become. Asterisk the heart that shouldn't exist. Sky outside turned black as the Zarth Dominion's ships hovered silently over the Terran base. No warnings were given, no demands were made, just silence. Inside the hidden bunker, Lyra sat with her arms around her knees, her glow barely visible in the dark. Eli stood guard beside her, his hand resting on the old plasma rifle he hadn't used in years. Dr. Lin was on the upper level, watching the monitors, whispering to the other scientists. What do they want? One asked, voice shaking. They want her, Lin replied. Or rather, what's inside her. Lyra lifted her head slowly, voice low. They want the heart. Eli crouched in front of her. Why? What makes your heart so important? She looked down at her chest, where soft light pulsed beneath her skin. It wasn't meant to exist. She said they created it in a lab, hidden from the council. An emotion core, for military use to make soldiers feel loyalty, not love. Not kindness, only obedience with passion. But something went wrong. She added, her fingers trembling. When they installed it in me, I felt more than commands. I felt choice. Eli listened in silence, his eyes steady on hers. I saw a child cry once, Lyra whispered, and instead of reporting it, I hugged her. That was the first time I broke protocol. She stared at the wall, voice distant. They said I was contaminated. I wasn't allowed to feel sorrow. But I did, and when I saw you, I felt peace. Eli's voice was calm. You're not broken, Lyra. You're more alive than they'll ever be. Suddenly, the alarms flared again. This time louder, a breach. Zarth soldiers were landing. Their armor like bone and black metal, each step making the ground tremble. Dr. Lin shouted through the intercom. They're heading for the lower levels. Eli raised his weapon, turning to Lyra. We have to move, but she stood still, her body glowing brighter now. Lights swirling like stars beneath her skin. No, she said quietly. They'll find me wherever I go. Eli looked at her, unsure. Then what do we do? Lyra closed her eyes, and when she opened them, they shone like burning ice. I was afraid before, she said, but now I remember what they did to the others. I won't run anymore. Eli stepped forward, his voice breaking. You can't fight them alone. She reached up and touched his cheek, her hand warm and steady. I'm not alone, she said. I have you. The ceiling above shook as explosions rocked the base. The lights flickered and dust rained from the beams. Lyra turned to the door, her voice calm. They called me fragile, but this heart inside me, they made it. They just didn't understand it. As the metal doors blew open with a roar, Zarth warriors stormed in, weapons raised. Eli aimed his rifle, ready to protect her with everything he had, but Lyra stepped forward before he could fire, her body now glowing like a star caught in a storm. She raised her arms, and the pulse from her chest surged through the room. It wasn't an explosion. It wasn't a weapon. It was a wave of emotion. The Zarth soldiers froze mid-step. Their eyes wide, limbs shaking. They dropped their weapons, not from fear, but from confusion. "What is this?" One of them gasped, voice trembling. "Why do I feel shame?" Another collapsed to his knees, covering his face. Lyra stood tall, her light softer now. "You used us like tools," she said, "but you gave me a heart. And now it sees you." Eli stepped beside her, watching the soldiers slowly retreat. The wave faded, the air still buzzing with a strange hum of living energy. Dr. Lin's voice cracked through the combs. "What did she do?" "She changed them," Eli whispered. "She made them feel." And for the first time in Terran history, the mighty Zarth fell back not from defeat, but from something far worse to them: empathy, as the ships pulled away into the clouds. Lyra turned to Eli, weak but smiling. "I didn't break," she said. "I chose, and I'm still here." He caught her as she stumbled, holding her close. "You're not just here," he said. "You're free." The rescue in the rain. The clouds cracked open above the desert as rain poured from a sky that once held fire. It was the first rainfall in months. Yet no one celebrated. The base lay in ruins, walls scorched, lights broken, and soldiers scattered. Like ghosts after a nightmare, the Zarth had withdrawn, but they left behind fear and silence. Lyra was missing. She had vanished after the confrontation, her light fading before anyone could stop her. Eli searched every corner of the base, heart pounding, mud soaking his boots as the storm grew stronger. "She's too weak to be out there alone," he shouted. "She's breaking." No one responded. The wind howled like a wounded animal, and thunder rolled across the valley. Dr. Lin tried tracking Lyra's biosignature, but it flickered like a dying flame. "She's collapsing," Lin said, her face pale. "Her core is burning out. Her system can't handle the overload." Eli didn't wait. He grabbed a thermal coat, a small med pack, and sprinted into the storm. Lightning lit up the sky in flashes, revealing broken trees and debris scattered like bones. He ran toward the last signal, calling her name into the dark. "Lyra!" he shouted again and again. "Please, answer me." Then he saw it, a faint blue light under a fallen tree, barely visible through the thick rain. He pushed the branches aside and found her, curled into herself, eyes shut, body cracked with glowing lines. Her skin was fractured like glass under pressure, and each breath came slower than the last. Eli dropped to his knees, pulled her into his arms, ignoring the sharp edges of her broken glow. "You're not dying today," he whispered, wrapping her in the coat. "I didn't come all this way to lose you." She opened her eyes slightly. "I'm too heavy," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the rain. "You weigh less than my heart right now," he said with a shaky smile, "so don't argue." He lifted her gently, her glow dimming against his chest, and started back toward the base. Step by step, every drop of rain hit like needles, but he didn't stop. Her fingers gripped his shirt weakly, as if afraid he might vanish too. "I ran so you'd be safe," she said, voice cracking like her skin. "You are what makes me safe," he replied. "So stop running." The path was slippery. The wind was violent, but Eli didn't fall. He walked through the flood and storm like a soldier carrying a star that refused to go out. When they reached the entrance of the base, doctors rushed to help, but Lyra refused to let go of him. Only when she was placed gently onto a thermal bed and covered in healing gel did she release his hand. Dr. Lin worked fast, connecting stabilizers, applying adaptive patches to her fractured body. She pushed her core too far, Lin said, but she held it together long enough to make them leave. Eli sat beside her the entire time, never blinking, never leaving. Hours passed before Lyra opened her eyes again, soft light returning to her body like sunrise touching snow. "You Came, she whispered, her voice full of wonder. Of course I did, Ely said. You didn't think I'd let the rain keep us apart, did you? She tried to smile, but tears formed instead, glowing like stars on her cheeks. I thought I was breaking, she said, but you held me. He reached for her hand, held it gently. You can break 1,000 times, he said, and I'll still carry every piece. In the days that followed, she began to heal. The base rebuilt, slowly, quietly. But everyone moved with new purpose. They had seen something impossible. Something that shook them more than war. An alien girl too fragile to be held. And a human who refused to let her fall. Human upgrade Elyra lay inside a transparent chamber, floating in warm healing fluid as engineers monitored every flicker of light from her core. Her body was no longer safe to exist as it was. The battle, the emotional surge, the wave she released it had damaged her from the inside out. Her skin was cracked beyond natural repair. Her joints weakened and her glow dimmed day by day. Ely sat outside the chamber every night, his hand resting on the glass, eyes never leaving her. He knew she could feel his presence, even if her eyes were closed. She needs an upgrade, Dr. Lin said. But it can't come from alien tech. It has to be Terran. Ely looked at the designs she placed on the table. It was something new, something never done before. A full-body interface made of adaptive bioglass and flexible alloys. Forged with human technology, but designed to fit her form. Not to change her, but to protect her. She'll still be Elyra, Lin said, but she'll finally be able to walk without fear, to touch without breaking. The process was dangerous. If her core rejected the human materials, she would fade. But if it works, she would be free. Ely signed the consent form without blinking. I believe in her, he said, and she believes in me. The upgrade took 17 hours. Technicians worked in silence, hands steady, breath held. They removed her fractured skin piece by piece, replacing it with soft layers of human-made crystal mesh. They reinforced her heart chamber with nanosilk, allowing it to pulse without tearing the surrounding tissue, and finally, they added nerve layers, connected through memory threads woven by Lyra's own thoughts. When it was done, the room was quiet. Then, her eyes opened. Soft blue light swirled in her pupils, brighter than before. She sat up slowly, no longer struggling to breathe. Her hands touched her arms, her chest, her face, and for the first time she didn't flinch. She turned to Ely, who stood in awe. Eyes wide with emotion, Lyra stepped forward, barefoot on the metal floor, and reached for him. He didn't move, only waited, holding his breath. Her fingers brushed his cheek, smooth and warm and alive. She smiled, tears forming. You feel real, she said, and now, so do I. Ely pulled her gently into a hug, and she melted into his arms. No cracks, no fear, just closeness. Dr. Lin stood quietly at the door. Wiping her eyes, she's the bridge, she whispered, between machine and soul. That evening, Lyra walked through the base without fear. She hugged the kitten, who purred in her arms, waved at soldiers, and even helped repair a broken drone. She laughed when it sparked. And everyone stopped to listen because it was the first time they heard her laugh. Later, she sat beside Ely, under the stars, wrapped in a soft human blanket, her glow lighting the night like a small star. Everything's different, she said, but you're the same. He looked at her and smiled. Maybe you were always meant to be one of us. She shook her head gently. No, I wasn't meant for anything. I chose this. Before he could respond, the alert system flared, but this time it wasn't the Zarth. It was a broadcast, open signal, sent across 5 systems. A message from the Zarth High Council, cold and demanding, return the prototype emotion core, they said, or prepare for total planetary quarantine. Ely clenched his fists, but Lyra stood calmly. She stepped toward the screen, raised her hand, and said one sentence, "You can't have my heart." And the galaxy would hear her speak for herself, not as a machine, not as a tool, but as a living being. Built for a human's heart, the Terran base stood quiet under starlight, but tension crackled in the air like a storm waiting to break. Above, 6 Zarth warships hovered in orbit, silent and threatening. Below, Earth's leaders watched their screens with held breath, waiting to see if this fragile peace would shatter in the command chamber. Lyra stood at the center, calm, glowing softly from within. Her voice had already been heard across systems, but now she had to be seen. Cameras floated around her, broadcasting her presence to every screen. Every ship, every enemy that had once controlled her fate. Eli stood just a few steps behind, arms crossed, eyes locked on her like she was the sun itself. Lyra took one breath, then spoke, her voice stronger than anyone expected. "You called me a prototype," she said, "a test subject, a weapon, but you never asked what I wanted. You filled me with feelings, then feared me when I used them. You built me to obey, and I chose to feel." The silence on the comms was deafening. The Zarth emissary finally answered. Voice, mechanical and cold. "You are property," it said. "Return the core or be erased." Lyra stepped closer to the monitor, her new frame pulsing with steady light. "This heart you fear," she said, placing a hand over her chest. "It is not a weakness. It's the reason I survived. It let me feel pain, love, kindness. And it brought me him," she said, turning briefly toward Eli, her voice softening. "I was too fragile for your love," she continued, "but I was built for a human's heart." In that moment, the signal pulsed and fractured across the stars. Other Christri hiding, silent. Broken heard her words. Some cried for the first time. Others reached out and held trembling hands. Her broadcast wasn't just seen, it was felt. The Zarth commanders began arguing behind muted screens, their perfect order cracking like their control. Eli stepped beside Lyra, his hand finding hers. And this time, she squeezed back, firm and fearless. She looked back at the camera, voice steady. "If you come for me, I won't run. But know this," she said, "I'm not alone. I never was." At her words, the Terran Council stood together, side by side with scientists, soldiers, even the kitten curled on the desk beside the console. Unity, it was something the Zarth never understood. The warships in orbit blinked out, one by one, leaving only starlight behind. No attack came, no invasion, only silence and peace later that night. Eli and Lyra sat on a hill above the base, her head resting on his shoulder as fireflies floated around them. "Do you think they'll come back?" she asked. "Maybe," he said, "but we'll face them together." She smiled, a real, deep smile. "I never believed in freedom," she whispered, "until I met someone who believed in me." He looked at her glowing skin, her eyes full of light, and whispered back, "You were never just built," he said. "You were born the moment you chose to live, and in the quiet of that night, under stars and memory. A fragile girl who once feared her own heartbeat found the one thing she was never meant to have, a place where she belonged and a heart that was finally, beautifully hers."